What is the single worst team comp you can make in Overwatch? Now, this was something going around on r/competitive Overwatch, people trying to figure out what is going to be the single worst team comp that you can possibly make. And I think that'd be really fun to try and have a crack at it. And so, what we're going to be looking at here is what is the single worst team comp you can have in a competitive setting, right? In a professional team environment. Because I think on ladder, this kind of question just doesn't really make any sense. It's really hard to pin down like what is good on ladder, what works, what comp, I guess. Because comps really don't matter so much on ladder. I think they matter much more in like team professional settings where every character you have to think about all the interactions between them and how they work. So basically, what I'm going to be trying to do here is figure out a team comp that synergizes so poorly together and that you cannot create a coherent, workable game plan with. So there are going to be some comps and some characters that you might think would show up here, but I don't think they work necessarily well together, or like it doesn't necessarily matter that a character is strong on their own if they don't complement a team comp well that they're in. It doesn't matter, right? So this is not going to be just a list comprised of the worst characters in the game. This is going to be trying to figure out, in theory, if all characters like this, just like basically their general play style, they don't mesh well together, they don't make a team comp well, they're not going to work. So when I first initially brainstormed this, what I did was I was like, well, the support pairings really dictate a lot of how the game plays, right? They determine what you can do, what resources you have available to you, and so I started by eliminating supports from there. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and start and eliminate a couple of supports, and then we're going to move over to a different category, and I'll tell you why. So I think initially, the first character you have to remove is Lucio. You can make a brawl comp work with any of them with Lucio at all. They're not going to be very good. You're not going to have a very good one if you do Lucio Lifeweaver, but Lucio brings the team a coherent game plan and a variable one, right? So there's multiple ways you can use speed. It's just too good of an ability and too consistent of one to even be considered for worst team comp. I know people are like Mercy Lucio is the worst comp in the game. You could so easily make a team comp based around just trying to kill something as humanly fast as possible, regardless of what characters you have on the team, because you have a damage boost and a Lucio, right? It's not very good, but I don't think it's the worst ever. There is a game plan there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove Lucio. Now, next, I'm going to remove characters that have certain tools that are really good and that you could really make a game plan around, or just so individually good that having that character on your team is probably just a boon for everybody overall. So Bionade, I think, is too strong to be considered for worst team comp for survivability. Tom, did you just hear me? I said I don't think it's Mercy Lucio. Ball Mercy Lucio could instantly kill anything they wanted. That is a game plan. That is a game plan. It's not good, but that is an executable game plan. Mercy Lucio Ball. Is it not? A Junkrat in there too. That's a dive character to go with them. Bro ain't heard of Suzu. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Junkrat is a dive character. Let's be real. He's found most of his success in Overwatch 2, very little of it, being mobile and getting up and one-shotting people. Now he can't do that anymore, so he sucks. But before Season 9, Junkrat was a dive character, basically. He just got on top of you. Anyways, also, Discord, too good of an ability. Too easy to make a game plan around. Just dive the Discord target. If they get out of the way, go to the next one, right? Doesn't matter what team comp you have. You can make it work, right? There's also Bap, I think, is also just a character who is too good. Bap and Kiri are just too good, two all-rounders. They have everything going for them. They can play in comps that play really well together. They can play in comps that are pretty solo-oriented. Both of them are just, they have too many tools available to them. that I don't think any comp with them in it is going to be functionally the worst ever. So we're going to go ahead and leave these supports left for now, because when I'm talking about game plans and I'm thinking about tanks, there is one tank in the category, all right, and we'll get to them later, that I think is like the game plan of the team, right? There is one tank in the category that is like, when you have this character on your roster, that is how you win the game. That is your win condition. So we'll get there. Basically, how I'm removing characters here is that there are some characters that are too versatile and have too much damage to, basically like versatility, really high consistent damage, and like good like survivability on their own. So in that regard, we're going to take out Doomfist because I think he can survive by himself really easily, do a lot by himself. Queen is too survivable, too really high damage. You can make a good idea of what you want to do with a Queen comp, basically with anything. Roadhog is generally too survivable, too independent, really. So him fitting into a bad team comp, it's just he can still do whatever he wants to do, even if his team doesn't really synergize with him. We're trying to find anti-synergy, not zero synergy, if that makes sense. Sigma is too all-rounder, too survivable, has too many variable playstyles to keep up with the team. Let me see here. Ball, again, is too survivable, too independent most of the time. Mauga is too survivable, too high damage. I think that just Mauga does require resources, but there is a world where he doesn't, right? There's a world where he would be okay with less of them. Honestly, even in like Mercy Kiriko comps, the Suzu is a big resource, yes, but in terms of the healing and everything, he provides most of that. Damage reduction, he provides that. Mauga is too team-oriented as well with Cardiac, even though it literally just got nerfed today. So I'm not going to put Mauga in there. As well, let's see. Ramatra is too survivable, in my opinion. Even if he doesn't have that many resources, he's going to be able to block and get damage at range more consistently. It's not going to be great, but it's something. Winston is also pretty versatile. He doesn't have to require resources. He can if he needs to, but most of the time, not really. He can create space without his team. He can just kind of hop up and run away and do kind of that kind of juggle there with the bubble. So he can do stuff without too much help. Reinhardt is too much of an enabler. So even if you aren't using Reinhardt to his fullest potential, I think just having a shield and being a little bit mobile with it allows too much of like a close-knit core, like a really good sustained core, even with other things, right? Just having that shield gives really good damage pressure to anybody else that you could provide it for. I don't think Reinhardt is one of the worst options here. Going off of that, going for the rest of these, Orisa, in theory, is too survivable right now. She's in a really rough state, but Fortify allows her to be a brick wall, just creates space, creates value because of it. And she has pretty good consistent damage still. So I think Orisa's not going to work as well. Diva, I'm going to pull out of here because she is... It's hard, but like Diva is still kind of... She requires some resources, but not many. She has more consistent damage. You can't really... There are certain characters that can contest Diva, and a lot of characters that just can't. And given the right circumstance, even in a comp that doesn't support Diva very well, she can still find a lot of value by herself. By being a presence on a high ground or an off angle or something like that. The reason I have Zarya here is because when you have Zarya in your comp, you are playing the comp to get your Zarya charge. You are playing the comp to get your Zarya in and out. She is Protect the President, right? You are playing Protect the President with Zarya. She is the President. So that gives us a really solid game plan. Like this is how you win, right? You get Zarya her charge and you get her back in the fight with her bubbles and resources, right? That's how you win. But that takes a long time to set up, so it's not very consistent, right? You have to, as the fight progresses, get to that level to play. So you need to stall out the fight. Now, we're getting into a good, consistent win condition and ways to disrupt that win condition with synergy coming from your supports and your DPS, right? So, let's go back to the support line here. Zarya comps are going to struggle with finding space because Zarya is really, really good at getting in your face, but when she doesn't have resources to do that, she's going to struggle, right? She's not going to have Lucio at all, so getting her in and out to give the bubbles to herself is really not going to be an option. So she's going to have to give bubbles to her teammates to find charge more often, right? So, with that being said, we're actually not going to go back to the supports. We are going to take out every single flanking DPS from this list because we do not want to give any sort of off-angle pressure at all to this team comp. That is the only way this comp is going to be able to make space, is to pull aggro and pull bubbles and get charged that way, make the enemy look at a flanker and bubble them. So we are going to get rid of Genji. We're going to get rid of Echo. We are going to get rid of Junkrat. We are going, in theory, I understand he's just kind of spamming, but like in practice, he could get her the charge and get out. So we're going to get rid of Reaper. We are going to get rid of Pharah. We are going to get rid of Sojourn. We're going to get rid of Soldier and Sombra. We're going to get rid of Tracer, and we're going to get rid of Venture. Okay? So now we have the flanking DPS out of the equation. Okay? I'm already going to go ahead and get Hanzo out of there too, because I think he could, in theory, take decent flanks and angles. And I don't want this comp to have any of that. I don't want there to be any space created other than Zarya walking, and that is the problem, right? We don't want Zarya to be able to survive if she has to walk, okay? So we'll get Hanzo out of there. My next one that I'm going to kill is Lifeweaver, because what you could do in theory is let your Zarya play hyper-aggressive, take aggro, take space, do a lot of damage, and pull her back to the backline, right? Then you wait it out, you sustain, get her bubbles back, and now she has charge to go in and do it again, right? So with that being said, I think Lifeweaver has to go. Talking about angles and space, we want to deny as much space as possible. I think an Illari flank, especially maybe even giving any of her DPS, or even her, probably not her Zarya, but any of her DPS, a pylon, that is going to create too much angle pressure. So I'm going to take Illari out of here. Now, that leaves me with 3 supports. We only need 2. I am going to stick with Brig. And the reason being is that Brig also has a really defined role. She is a protector, and she is also kind of flank repellent, right? She's not very good at being flank repellent. She's okay. It's not like as worth it to have her not be a protector. So Mercy and Moira do not flank or do not need protection, right? They don't need the protection that Brig provides. So this is already like anti-synergy here. Moira more so because she has her own survivability in her own kit and in Fade, right? To heal herself. So she really doesn't need Brig at all. Mercy, there's a bit more of an argument to give her packs and to keep people away from diving her when she is the more susceptible after her slingshots. But still, Mercy is probably not going to be playing near the Brig at all, right? So we don't really care about that. Now, if we do have Brig with a Zarya, we have to be really careful about the sustainability that we give this comp. That's why I got rid of a lot of the other characters that would have been able to create a much more defensive core, because Zarya and Brig have been played together. Overwatch 1 double bubble, you would create an Ana, Brig, Zarya core, and they would go together and be really hard to get rid of them, especially when Zarya got her charge, right? Brig was kind of protecting the Zarya. She was protecting more of the Ana, but she protected Zarya indirectly as well. So I think it's fine to have a little bit of that synergy, but we don't want to have it with too many characters. And so Moira and Mercy are the ones that really don't need it, so that makes more sense to me. Now, when it comes down to this decision, this is hard, and I'm going to come back to this later. But really it comes down to Moira plays very fast and Brig does not. right? Moira plays very fast. Zarya cannot play very fast, right? She needs time to build her charge. And if she doesn't have a flanking DPS to do that, she needs to do it herself. And that's really tough because once she uses all of them, she's going to be a sitting duck, and she's not going to have any savior abilities from her Moira or her Mercy or her Brig. Now, I know I said I'd come back to supports, but I already have another thing I didn't even think about, and I'm going to talk about that now. I'm going to remove Mercy because, one, damage boost. If you are somehow successful at keeping the Zarya up, damage boost will definitely help your win con. Two, Mercy in theory, and Moira too, could get Zarya charge. Mercy could do an aggressive slingshot in and slingshot back with the bubble, right? I don't think that's very good because they're going to recognize that that's what you're doing and they're not going to shoot Mercy. Eventually, they're going to figure out like, oh, they're just trying to get charge off of this stupid aggressive Mercy. Just don't shoot her. It'll waste a bubble, right? So it's not a great one. Moira, on the other hand, can kind of do the same. She can kind of flank. But the thing about Moira is that she is needed there to keep the Zarya up. So if Moira is flanking and taking the aggro, then they're going to realize that they can just turn on Zarya. Or they can turn on anybody else. Because Moira is going to be the main sustainability, like short sustainability. So if she's the one getting aggressive, it's not going to work, right? So that's why I think this is fine. Mercy also, Brig could, in theory, protect a res. And if you res Zarya, she's going to res with 0 charge, so it maybe doesn't matter that much. But Brig could still find value of somebody got really aggressive, maybe even like one of the other DPS gets really aggressive, and then Mercy is able to do a res with protection from the Brig. Again, not a great idea, but to me, that doesn't scream worst comp of all time. To me, Brig and Moira do not synergize with each other, and they do not synergize very well with Zarya's biggest game plan, right? So then that comes down to, how do we get the DPS in this position, right? So I'm going to go ahead and remove Mei because I think she's too survivable. Mei does not require resources, so they don't really have to worry about her, and Mei just provides really good value against the other teams. Some way to stop the other teams from advancing on a Zarya, trying to get charged and trying to get back and get her resources. So that's too defensible. We don't want to have that, right? Sim, take a shot every time lane says survivable. Okay, yeah, you will die. You're dead. If you've done that, you're already dead. I'm sorry to tell you that. Sim, Zarya could do some TP shenanigans where you TP on the backline, bubble, TP out, get your charge that way. I think that could be too strong. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. Ashe is just kind of the case of an all-rounder. Really good against a lot of comps, and she gives the comp a little more range, so it's going to be harder to get to them. Not a good idea, I don't think, at least. So we don't want to make the comp super well-rounded. We're going to take Ashe out. We're also going to take Cass out because he creates too much of a good core, too defensible with a Brig and a Zarya because he's got flashbang and really close range. Now this is where I've kind of come at a crossroads where I'm not exactly sure what combination of these characters is truly the worst, because on paper, Widow does not synergize with any of this very well. Brig does not really protect a Widow. She doesn't really need to. Obviously, like, Zarya and Moira don't really work well with Widow at all. But Widow also has really, like, high just pop-off potential, right? Widow is a character that, in the right hands, in theory, could control a lobby. And we wanted to have the win con be solely on the Zarya, right? We wanted one single win con. So in my opinion, I think Widow is the one that we have to remove here, because there's too much variability with how much a Widow could pop off, right? The lows are lower, but the highs mean that the comp you could just bypass the comp and let the Widow player do the magic, right? Especially mix it with the Brig. Again, you might be too defensible. I'm trying not to say survivable. So That leaves us with Bastion and Torb. Now, Bastion requires too many resources, so does Zarya. There is a big at odds here, right? Now, you could be thinking to yourself, why not Bastion turret form and bubble him, right? And then he's just like this big, like, you can't shoot him at all. He's this big, force in the game, right? The problem with that is that Bastion and Zarya want to rotate their pressure, right? So in theory, what you would want to do is, basically, if you bubble the Bastion, then they're just going to kite him and not shoot him whatsoever. You get no, You get no charge at all. You do not get your win con, and now your Bastion is down. You have no defense, right? You have no pressure. So I think in theory, what you would want to do is change, like Bastion goes turret form, and that's when you would try to walk, and then use Zarya bubble. Maybe you would Zarya bubble first. Use Zarya bubble, try to take space that way, then rotate with your Bastion, and then once your Bastion is done, hopefully you get one more bubble to keep going. Do you see the problem here? If Zarya is walking at you, like, if this is the plan, you can just avoid this or nullify this super hard, right? You know that the only plan that they have is that they're going to rotate their bubbles, and they rotate bubbles with turret form. So you just wait for that to happen. Don't shoot the Zarya. She's not going to get any charge. She's not going to be any DPS pressure while they're walking up. Brig and Moira sure are not going to be a DPS pressure while they're walking up. They have no speed. It's going to be really hard for them to get in. Then once the Bastion comes, there's no bubbles for him, so you either burn him or just kite him. And then by the time Zarya gets one bubble back, she has no charge. And she's just, now this core is going to get surrounded because they're trying to walk up and make space, but it's not going to work, right? It's just not going to work. And they're going to burn resources while they're doing it, right? Moira's going to run out of piss. Brig's probably going to run out of packs. If Brig even gets in position to get an Inspire out, right? That's going to be really hard too. Brig can't get Inspire if the team is constantly kiting away from the Bastion. So this is really, really hard to get what you're going for. And then Torb is just kind of bad. Turret is fake off-angle pressure. It's really easily destroyed. Nobody is going to bother protecting it. It doesn't matter if you look away from this comp because they have no damage and no kill threat. Torb himself is just like, he spams down chokes, I guess, but like, I don't know. Torb is just not a great character overall. And again, he's not very defensible. He's just kind of like anti-dive. And you don't need anti-dive if you have Brig. So a lot of his power in Overload is just kind of worthless. Like, you don't need it very much. If they were trying to dive you, which, you know, otherwise he's just not a good spam character, right? He is one of the worst spam characters. You could just pick any better spam comp and he would be worthless. Bastion would also be worthless. So, yeah, basically, this comp just doesn't function to any of the win conditions that any of the characters have, right? You can't play any of their styles particularly well because it's always at odds with another character on the battlefield trying to make that, right? They don't have any particularly really good tools that would put them over the edge. They don't have particularly good pop-off potential. None of them really have really good pop-off potential. Definitely not Moira. Bastion, definitely not Torb. Zarya can't do it if she can't get charged. Brig definitely doesn't have pop-off potential, at least in killing threat. So, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, maybe you could convince me of other things, but this to me seems like the worst comp you could pull up to a Pugs or a Scrim with. Obviously on ladder, anything could happen. Again, that wasn't really the point of this. It's not really about ladder. It's about, like, what is the lowest of lows that we can get? And that's going to be in a professional environment, in a team environment. How do you make a comp that just does not have any sort of semblance of a game plan? This is the closest I think I have. So, anyways, thank you. This was a very interesting topic. I had really fun trying to brainstorm this. If you like this, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. It does really help me out on the YouTube. If you want to get in on the discussion live, that's twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then join my Discord if you want. Link is down below. Plenty of always taking suggestions for Overwatch rework ideas, hot takes, anything like that. I do really appreciate those. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.